Welcome to our preview for the Minnesota Wild, uncontested sports, and we have been previewing every team going into the following season. So what we're going to do is look through their lineup, a couple things to note here, and we have a very special guest to do that today. We got Mr. Michael Russo from The Athletic. We had him on our show recently, so go check that out. That will be in the description. Check him out at The Athletic. Check him out on Twitter at Russo Hockey, where he is a great follow, has over 150,000 followers. And check out, he has his podcast of his own, one called Worst Seats in the House and one called Straight from the Source. So check that out, follow him on all social medias, and thank you very much for joining us, Michael.
Anytime, guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. John, I'll let you start because we got a lot to cover here. Start by recapping last season.
All right, so they finished third in their division with a record of 35, 16, and 5, 24th power play in the league, and 12th PK in the league. In the offseason, they lost Suter, Parise, Johansson, and Bonino, but they added Goligoski, Kulikov, and Merrill. Their points leaders last season were Kaprizov with 51 points, Fiala with 40 points, and Zuccarello with 35 points.
There we go.
So we see the power play here is 24th. Did they do anything in the offseason to make you think that it's going to improve, or what would you do if it hasn't?
I think the hope is that guys like Boldy and Rossi, if they make the team or at some point come up, can help. I definitely think a guy like Boldy can. Goligoski is perennially been a power play guy. He actually had a really good, especially the second half of last season for Arizona. He helped them along the way. I think he had 20 something points in his last 20 games there. So the hope is that Goligoski will help. But look, I mean, they've just got to be better on the power play. There were times last year where their power play was outstanding. And there are times that it just was not. And so, guys like Kaprizov, Zuccarello are going to have to continue to perform on their Fiala as well. But they've got to be much better. Eriksson Ek is going to get much more power play time this year. He did a lot of his work last year at even strength and had a career year as well. So, the hope is that some of these guys like Greenway could be a better play on it as well. Dumba, hopefully offensively will become much more of a presence on the power play than he was last year as well. But their power play at times really hurt them last season, as you mentioned, John.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
I'll just add quickly. It's pretty crazy that they had the record they did and did as good as they did with a 24th power play in the league.
Yep.
And they definitely have pieces there for it to improve. I agree. And you have Boldy, who played a bit at the end of last season, I believe, and Rossi coming in. So we'll see how they do. But, John, I want you to go through the forwards, and we'll go position by position here for the Wild.
Yeah, all right. So we got their first line according to Daily Faceoff. Greenway, Eriksson Ek, and Foligno. They were, as we were talking about before, 5th in expected goals for in the league last season. Second line, they have Kaprizov, Rask, and Zuccarello. Third line, Boldy, Hartman, Fiala. And fourth line, Sturm, Gaudreau, and Bukestad.
Yeah, I think that most likely Sturm will start at center on that fourth line. Boldy right now I think is a placeholder there. If for some reason, my gut says that Gaudreau is going to wind up on that Fiala line because they played together before back with both Milwaukee and Nashville. You could put Gaudreau at left wing or you could put Gaudreau at center. So now the question is, if the fourth line does not have Gaudreau on it, I just cannot see the Wild putting Boldy on the team to play him fourth line minutes. So maybe it changes if Boldy is very good in camp, that he could be elevated in the lineup. If not, I could see them taking a guy like Duer or Duhaime, 2 energy guys from Iowa, and put them on the team and put them in a fourth line role to start the season. I just have trouble believing that the Wild would put a top prospect there, but we'll see. The other thing is if Rossi comes in and just blows them away, that would allow them to really lower Victor Rask in the lineup. I think Eriksson Ek is going to get a chance in camp to see what he could do between Kaprizov and Zuccarello. And if that's the case, maybe you put Hartman on that line with Foligno and Greenway in the middle there, and you have a really good checking line, or you could put even Gaudreau there as well. But, again, the way that Dean Evison talks about Gaudreau, it sounds like he's going to start him on a line with Fiala, so we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of, we're from Montreal, obviously. I feel like the forward group has similar vibes to Montreal. You have players there that can play. but really just a lot of depth on this team. You have the top nine you have three solid lines there. A fourth line, like you're talking about, has some pieces that can play. How do you think that forward group shapes up to other teams that are in the playoffs?
I mean, the Wild, when they beat you through depth. And, their depth last year at even strength, there was a time in the second half down the stretch where they weren't as good at even strength, but their even strength play for much of the year was really good, near the top in, as you mentioned, expected goals and even strength goals, things like that. So that's the way that they beat you. They don't have the true star power, although Kaprizov gives them a little bit of that. Fiala was absolutely awesome down the stretch as well. He usually picks it up, late in the year. He showed that 2 years ago as well. But look, when you're facing against Colorado, a top-heavy team, or a Winnipeg team that's got a ton of talent, the Wild obviously didn't see last year because of the pandemic. That's tough to compete with. But the Wild, and same thing with Vegas. I mean, it showed during the playoffs there that the Wild could have beaten a team like Vegas, but still, their top players did the Wild in, the Mark Stones and the Pat Patriottis and people like that. So I mean, they're in a situation where they're going to have to continue to beat you with depth. Up the middle is still where they're the weakest. Bill Guerin has said it's going to be another center by committee approach, which usually just means that you don't have a top center. Eriksson Ek looked like he was becoming that last year, but he still is what he is, and that's just a top two-way centerman, somebody that clearly surprised me with his offensive capabilities last year. But I'm going to want to see him do it against 31 other teams as opposed to 7 last year. And 4 of those teams being really lousy defensive teams, and the 3 California teams in Arizona last year as well. So, it's going to have to be depth. I mean, that's the only way in depth and balance that they're going to be able to compete against those Colorados and the top offensive teams in the Western Conference.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I'll just add a word fast here. They've always been known for their defense, and I like what you said there about their forward group. But let's move on to their defense. John, you can read that out.
Yeah, Brodin and Dumba are on their first pairing. Second pairing, Goligoski, that new addition with Spurgeon. And their last forward pairing, Kulikov and Mara, also 2 new additions.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that to me, as we talked on the last show, guys, I mean, that is to me going to be the biggest question coming into training camp and really the season is, do they take a step back because they bought out Ryan Suter, lost Carson Soucy to expansion, and Ian Cole of the Carolina Hurricanes? It's a new look blue line. They targeted Alex Goligoski. They truly believe that Goligoski will be able to fill in for Ryan Suter and maybe even give them a better pair there. But their third pair is, to me, the biggest question mark. I mean, their third pair with Soucy and Cole was really, really good. And, now all of a sudden you get Kulikov in here, you get, Maryland here, and just are they as good? They added Jordy Ben a couple days ago as well on a 1-year deal to, you watched him a lot, David, last year, I'm sure, with Vancouver. You've seen him with Montreal, John. So, I mean, you guys probably know Jordy. Yeah, actually, you tell me, is Jordy going to be able to fill in in a 7th D role, but also occasionally fill in and be good?
John, you want me to
Is that
start?
the answer?
You want me to start?
I mean, answer. Well, he was a lot better in Montreal than I think he was with you guys.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We got him out of Montreal to 2x2 deal. I was pretty happy. Like that year, we kind of revamped our blue line a little. We brought in Tyler Myers. We re-signed. We didn't revamp it with Edler, but we re-signed Edler. Quinn Hughes was coming in, so it was going to be a different look. We bring in Jordy Ben to be a 5-6 guy, and he ended up finding his way out of the lineup, and it surprised a lot of people. But his play just wasn't really good. He didn't really contribute much offensively. He struggled in his own zone. Then this year comes around, and a lot of people found, like, Vancouver does these awards, and one of them is the Unsung Hero Award. And I saw a lot of fans voting for Jordy Ben because when he was in the lineup, he actually did really good. He played with Quinn Hughes for some of the year because Quinn needed a guy who can play defense a little better, and they put Jordy Ben with him. And Vancouver got hot for that, not the start of the year, but after they had their cold stretch, after they were 500 for a bit, and Jordy Ben played with Quinn, so he can I think in the 7-6 role, he's great, but I definitely wouldn't rely on anything more than that from Jordy Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with us, he had a career year, so I wasn't that happy when they got rid of him. Well, he left, but I wasn't happy when they lost him to the Canucks, and I thought he was a very good 5-6 guy, but I guess it just didn't end up panning out in the same way.
Yeah, and I mean, he comes here knowing that right now he's going to start as the seventh D, and it would not shock me at all if he winds up in the lineup at some point here because John Merrill I mean, I like him as a player, but you guys saw him last year, John. I mean, I don't know if he's your everyday defenseman.
Yeah.
He's never played really he's never been a full season guy really in the NHL. So, I could see Jordy, getting in and being a significant part of this team. I like Jordy as a player, but he's not the same player that he was obviously in Dallas years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with Jordy and Merrill. I think I'd rather Jordy, honestly, at some point in the season. So, yeah. And next thing I wanted to talk about was the goaltending situation. You have Cam Talbot, a veteran, versus Kakinen, who's a very young player, but they were hot at different times in the season last year. So, what do you see happening there?
Well, Cam is gonna, it's an 82 game season. He's in his mid 30s, so they're gonna need Kakinen to play. And last year, when Cam had an injury to start the year, and then he was put into COVID protocol. Kakinen came in and was just outstanding. Won 9 straight games, I believe it was at one point. But then his game absolutely took a turn for the worst. Really starting with a 9-goal game in St. Louis is one of the worst goaltending performances I think I've ever seen in the NHL. I mean, it really was hard to watch. He just was waving at pucks at times in that game, and because it was a back-to-back situation, Evason never took him out and just let him bear the brunt of the pain, and it was hard to watch, and it seemed to affect him because he really struggled down the stretch. I think he went 4-4 down the stretch, but his goals against was in the fours. He had a 9-goal game. He had a 7-goal game in Colorado. There was another tough game there, maybe a 5-goal game. But look, when he's good, he's great. He's calm in net, quiet. Rebound control is an issue. Plays the puck exceptionally. But Cam is really, really stable in net, poised. If he gives up a bad goal, which was few and far between this year, he doesn't let it bother him the rest of the game. But because it's now an 82 game season, I think they're going to need Kakinen to play, 30 games. And, I think he's got that capability. So I think their goaltending is good. Cam really impressed me last year. He's a great guy as well. Just a real pro and really good person to sort of mentor a guy like Kakinen, who's a very smart, well-spoken, quality goaltender. So, is he a true number one in this game? I don't think he's shown me enough yet to. He definitely hasn't shown the Wild enough. I mean, heck, they left him exposed in the expansion draft. We'll see. That to me, I think surprised some fans too, that they would expose a 24-year-old for a 34-year-old. To protect him. And so I think it says something about what the Wild feel the long-term expectations are for a guy like Kakinen.
Yeah, no, for sure. He, like both you guys mentioned, they're hot at different times of the year, and certainly an interesting dynamic in goal that will be one to follow. Before we get to our predictions for the season, I want to touch on a couple players to watch here going into this year. On our list, well, actually, John prepared this. I'd be lying if I said I did. Of players to watch, we got Kirill Kaprizov, the whole contract situation. If you guys want to see Michael's thoughts on that, check out him on our episode where he gives the full update. But Kaprizov, if he does come back, he'll be a player to watch. And we also have Matthew Boldy. He played a little bit at the end of last season. What are your thoughts on how he played and the expectations for him as well as Kaprizov?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see Kaprizov now play a full 82 game season, the most he's ever played in his career, against 31 teams. He'll get to play, my quick math, 24 teams that he didn't get to play last year. So I'll get to also see this country, up in Canada, which he hasn't seen except for World Juniors, the one year where he was just unbelievable up in your neck of the woods in Montreal. But Like to me, I want to see is he a true star that could put this team on his back, because he's certainly going to get paid like it. I mean, he's going to be top, one of the top paid players in the NHL coming up here after, and he'll get the highest AAV in the history of this league for somebody that's played as few a game. So I want to see, can he lead that guy? Boldy is an interesting guy. I mean, had a great year for Boston College, goes to Iowa, tears it up as well, just got better and better and better, learned how to be a pro. So I don't think he's far away from being able to play in the NHL. I mean, we saw last year with Caulfield, there's a lot of comparables between Montreal here and Minnesota that we keep on bringing up here, which is ironic because that's where you guys are coming from. But I mean, we saw Caulfield that these guys, and again, they're different human beings, but that these guys can step in and function in the NHL and be great, great players. And like, I'm not putting Boldy. We'll see. I mean, the Wild took Boldy over Caulfield, Cole Caulfield, right? So I mean, there's always going to be that link in Minnesota comparing the two. But look, can Boldy come in and be an impactful player right away? I think he's got that ability. The question is Bill Guerin going to let him right away? To me, this is a different situation than Rossi. This is a guy that's been playing for the last couple of years and not had the health issue. He's somebody that had a great year at Boston College, goes to Iowa, gets his his feet wet playing professional hockey and function admirably. So to me, this should be a different situation, and he should have a really quality chance at making this team, because as you mentioned, David, at the beginning, there's there's an open spot for him to potentially be in the lineup. They bought out Parisian. There is that hole there. But if they put Goudreau in that hole, the question is, do they put Boldy in a fourth line role to start the team? That is not something that Bill Guerin would want to do. So we'll see. If Boldy is great in camp, I think he's got a great chance of making this team. But at a minimum, even if he doesn't start in Minnesota, I don't think it'll take him long to get up here. I think he's got an ability to play right away at some point here in the early part of the season.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want a 20-year-old 12th overall pick, so much hype about him. You don't want him starting on the fourth line.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Minnesota fans want to see that. I don't think if you're someone rooting for Boldy and his development, you want to see that. I don't think the Wild want that either. So all good points. I guess we're good to go on to our predictions on where they finish in that Central Division. I'll go first. And Michael, you're not going to like this one, but I gotta say what I'm thinking. I think Minnesota missed the playoffs. I think they finish in that fifth spot, and I think it's really close. But I have at 1 in that division, Colorado. At 2, I have the Blues. I think they lose Hoffman up front. We don't know what's going to happen with Tarasenko. They lose Bozak on third line center, even though there's talk that he might even be back. But they get Buchnevich in there, who I think will slip in there on their first line. You bring in Brandon Saad. You get 2 good pieces there in your top 6. They got really unfortunate with injuries last year too, with Schwartz, Parayko, whatever. I have Blues second. I have the Jets third, and then I have Dallas fourth. That was the toughest one to pick between Minnesota and Dallas. I went Dallas because there's always teams who miss the playoffs the year before that get in. There's always teams that make the playoffs that miss the year after. Dallas, I like them in goal more, even though we need to see how they do this season. Certainly going a lot off name value there. Up front, I find they're comparable, and on the blue line, Dallas got better, adding Ryan Suter, and with Heiskanen and Klingberg there leading the way. I like Dallas a bit more. I have Minnesota just missing at fifth. John, I guess you can do your prediction next, and we'll finish up with Michael.
Yeah, I'm similar to you. I'm torn between Minnesota as well as the Jets and the Stars. I feel like they could all just kind of finish wherever among those 3. I'm gonna say Minnesota finishes third in the division. I'm gonna put St. Louis and Colorado ahead of them. I'm kind of like putting faith in that young core too. They could easily finish 4th or 5th, but I'm gonna say third just because I have a bit of a gut feeling.
Yeah, I think it'll go Colorado, Winnipeg, Minnesota, St. Louis. I actually think St. Louis is going to take a step back. I mean, it could even be Dallas. I guess my biggest question to you, David, is if you have them finishing 5th, who are the 4 you have making it from the Pacific? Because I see Vegas, I see Edmonton, But then I'm conflicted. Like, do you really think there's going to be 4 teams out of the Pacific that make it? Because even if the Wild finish fifth in the Central, as you predict, I mean, technically there would have to be 4 in the Pacific to make it. So who are your 4? And let your allegiances, like, don't be biased here.
I'm not biased. I've defended this so hard in the podcast. I have Vancouver. I think Vancouver's going to finish second in that division.
I have them going first, actually, Vancouver. I'm
So
even higher on them than he is.
Wow. So you think they're going to be over Vegas?
I know.
Yeah. It's because
Okay.
here's the problem with me in Vancouver. I hear all of his talk all the time, every day about Vancouver and how sick they are. And then when it comes to predictions, my mind is filled with all this stuff that he's been telling me. And then he's more realistic than I am. But I'm going first.
I have Vancouver getting in. I love their top 9 now. I think it's the best that it's been since that 2011 run. Maybe that's a bit of a hot take. I got the buzzer all to myself, so no one can ring it on me here. But their defense, it takes a step back. But if you look at that team that got them in the playoffs and that did good in the bubble in 2019-20, you're banking on essentially OEL being what Chris Tanev was, which is not going to happen. So it's a downgrade. But if he can play as a solid number 4, okay. And then Hamonic being what Edler was. And I think Hamonic, he struggled this year. It was a new team. He finally started finding his game, and then COVID happened. So I think that Hamonic can do what Edler did. And so I think a slight downgrade on defense there, a better upgrade up front, and good goaltending. So I have Vancouver getting in. And then I think Calgary really get in. I don't get how they didn't make it last season, to be honest with you. I think Markstrom is an unbelievable goalie. He's maybe I'm biased on that front because I watched him seal so many games with Vancouver, but I like Markstrom a lot. I think that their blue line, yes, they lose Giordano, but I still think they have a solid blue line. And up front, they have 3 real lines that can play. Yeah. So I think those 4 teams get in.
Yeah. Well, that was a good answer. I mean, I just think I'll be interested on Vancouver. I mean, I like their top 6, as you mentioned. I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson might be the most overrated player in the league. I am not but you know what? The Wild beat Arizona every single time they play them, like literally almost every time.
Yeah.
And OEL is, I just have never seen him play a good game. So maybe that's sort of the reason why I think that, but I'm not a fan. But maybe he just needed to get a change of scenery out of there too. So maybe we'll see the real OEL, behind, probably a better team down there up in Vancouver. So, but I think the Wild make the playoffs. But if they miss the playoffs, you're exactly right. They will not be 8th. They will be 5th. Miss it just by the bubble. Pick 14th in the draft, like they always do. They're not going to be. Like, to me, if they're going to miss the playoffs, I'd love to see them really, really miss the playoffs. Like, make it count, we'll see. I think they'll still make it. But the blue line's the key. I mean, their blue line is, they went from having a great top 6 to now a very questionable, when I say questionable, I'm not saying I don't believe they're going to be good, but I question, what are they going to be? Are they going to be the same team or not? So that's the big thing that I want to see.
Yeah, no, it will be interesting for sure. And I agree, Ekman-Larsson, terrible last season, by the way. Every time I was watching him last year, I'd see him get burned. I'd see, if I was a fan of the other team, I'd be hoping I would be hoping for Ekman-Larsson to jump the board some games. But he wasn't always like that. And I'm really hoping that he can find that. I think Vancouver fans everywhere are. So, but
by the way, I'm already, I got a story idea list here, and I just added blue line analysis to it. So I talked myself into a story. So.
I like it. And I don't know. There's our team preview for Minnesota. Went on a little longer than a normal team preview, but we have what's been the biggest guest on our show so far, the best guest we've had on. And we don't say that to everyone, I promise. So
and the most long-winded guest. So
no, you killed it. Great analysis. And check out all of his work. Let us know in the comments. Do you think Minnesota get in or not? For Michael, he had them at 3, right behind Colorado, Winnipeg. John had them at 3 behind Colorado, St. Louis. I had them at 5. So Where do they fall? Let us know. Thank you so much again, Michael, and check out our other episode where we had Michael on. And that was a blast, boys, and that's a wrap.